All right. Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are around the world. Ed, welcome
Hello.
back. It's been 2 weeks.
Yes. Hello. Good to see you again. Yes.
You're
It's been a lot.
looking good,
Am I?
actually. Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
gosh. Well, that's just,
Well,
that's
sometimes you come on and I'm like, you just look sad.
Well, yeah. I didn't drink heavily last night or anything.
Okay.
So I just had a bottle of wine. So
Okay. Just a
it
bottle.
was it was just a normal night. So everything's okay. Today's Mother's Day in Finland. So I've
Mhm.
we went. Well, went for a meal, which was nice. And then what else has happened? No, but a lot's happened in the last 2 weeks since we last spoke, because of course we were geared up to speak about Twitter, and
Yes.
that's been rather taken over by other news events.
I hopefully will be able to just get a little bit in. I mean, I think it's kind of I guess it's played out to a certain degree, but I would like to talk about the free speech issue, although maybe we should just save it because I think we have to talk about the abortion issue and Roe v. Wade. But before we do that, so we are actually streaming live on a couple of platforms. We're streaming live on Twitter, which seems to be where people find it. I hesitate to even say this. We actually do have a YouTube account because, well, I've been such a good boy. So we'll see what happens. But we just have a couple. We don't have very many subscribers right now. We just have like 1,000 or so. But we just have 15 brave souls watching on there. But you can watch on Odyssey as well. And you can also send us super chats via Odyssey. So I would prefer that we just start using Odyssey as opposed to Entropy. It's just a hell of a lot easier. Entropy never really integrated in the way that I would have liked. And so please, if you would like to send us a super chat, we will read it. And I will get the URL address. But if you just go to the Radix, if you go to odyssey.com and then search for Radix Live or my name or Ed's name, I'm sure you'll find it. So we will get to super chats in a little bit. I'll put the actual URL up there in a sec. Okay, so I was traveling last weekend, and I was actually in DFW Airport, and I got a alert on my phone, and it said a leaked draft of a decision overturning Roe v. Wade has been given to Politico. And I guess I did feel something in the air, actually, in that airport, because everyone has some kind of news alert, and this, it hit everyone all at once. I actually did kind of feel unease or interest or excitement or hysteria or something. It was subdued, but it was there.
Oh, you're not pregnant again, are you?
Right. Well, I better have an abortion quick.
You better sort that out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because I'm a birthing person. I identify as such.
Well, that's interesting as well, isn't it? I mean, it's so quick and so predictable that we've gone from what do we mean by a man? A man can give birth, men have wombs and they can have babies, to them screeching that a man should have no right to have any say in the abortion debate.
Right.
I mean, it's wonderful.
It is kind of wonderful. It's better, don't you think? They're kind of, I mean, because we've gone away from like the extreme luxury of discussing gender identity deconstruction, and the rubber has hit the road, as it were, and they have to actually get back to something that is meaningful, which is that I want to protect this. So yeah, I'm a woman and I have a right to choose.
You heard Finkelstein said a few minutes ago in the chat that take a shot every time Spencer says when the rubber hits the road. And
well,
it didn't take long.
See, I can't support this kind of thing because I could be actually held liable for alcohol poisoning. So I do not endorse this game that they are
But yes, I mean, my initial reaction was to think that obviously from the last couple of years since COVID and George Floyd and all this, it has become manifest in a way to ordinary people, not just to people that are interested in thinking about these things, that America is really coming apart at the seams and doing so at breakneck speed. And somebody, I forget who it was, said Can anything survive this age of rage? It was some American politician or something. He referred to this age of rage, which I thought was quite piquant. And it's certainly true that the very idea that that could be leaked, that you could have a serious thing like that leaked from the Supreme Court, clearly leaked for political reasons, because it gives the opponents more time to organize and whatever, and put up a defense than they otherwise would have.
Maybe even change the minds.
Maybe even change the minds. And then, of course,
perhaps.
there's attempts to do that with these intimidation tactics of protesting outside their houses or whatever it happens to be. Then that is just that nothing is sacred, really. I mean, we knew that, but it's just so clear that trust is so low between the two Americas, between basically coastal America and Jesus land. The trust is so low that they're prepared to do that. So I think it's a real sign of the end times of the United States.
I agree. I mean, I believe technically the Supreme Court decision for Roe v. Wade was leaked to a degree. I think it was given to a mainstream newspaper so that they were prepared to it was given to Time. They were prepared to introduce it. So I agree to a certain extent. I mean, I think it's bad and inappropriate. I'm not just, horrified. I guess maybe because I have a bit of a cynical attitude towards the Supreme Court itself. I think it's worth, two things. First off, the conservatives seem to be obsessed with the leak itself as opposed to the actual decision. So they are talking about how this is so terrible and so on. And I agree, it's, inappropriate and bad. You shouldn't do that. But I don't know. I mean, isn't the decision itself, the big thing? I mean, we would have had these protests before. And secondly, although I think it is most likely that a liberal clerk did it. So a clerk, with Sotomayor or one of the others, probably did this. I agree. But it might turn out that there's a kind of fascinating intrigue in here, that basically a conservative clerk or even a conservative justice might have wanted to kind of two things: prepare the public for what's coming, and maybe even lock in votes, in the sense of showing where the people lay out what we understand. I read the entire decision, the missive, and it was not surprising. I've heard this stuff from pro-lifers before, but they wanted to kind of lock in the votes. Apparently, Roberts might very well thread the needle and basically say that, what we think this Mississippi law is okay, but we don't want to overturn Roe v. Wade, this kind of stuff. But they wanted to kind of just show where people are, lock them in, because this is going to be massively contentious. And the kind of political fallout from this, I don't think can be underestimated. It is going to absolutely motivate Democrat voters. And for the past year and a half, people have talked about, the midterms, it's the Republicans. They're going to sweep it. They might take back the Senate even. All of that seems still likely. But I mean, this is going to motivate Democrat voters like nothing else, because, I think there's one thing in the age of a polarization. It is kind of an attempt to prove that the other side is crazy. And so what was with the Virginia gubernatorial election that happened 6 months ago, and some other and some of these recent things involving Disney in Florida, I think Republicans were successfully able to make the Democrats look insane. The whole libs of TikTok thing, where you're just showing these videos of probably in many cases mentally ill TikTokers talking about, telling 3-year-olds about their gender identity and all that kind of stuff, that made the other side look insane. And negativity is a much more motivating factor than positivity. Richard Nixon understood this. That was his entire career.
Yes, it was fascinating that there was this woman that decided to track down and go to the house of the woman who ran libs of TikTok, when all she actually did was just show that libs of TikTok were these bonkers people. But the
I
fact
agree.
the fact that
But
she,
if
the
you have a
fact that she
million,
showed that, the fact that she showed them what they were just by splicing together the juiciest clips of them, was a blasphemy, and therefore she was a danger, and therefore she had to be tracked down and intimidated with all the power that this mainstream journalist has. I thought it was a
I
fascinating.
agree. However, if you enter the political forum to the degree that Libs of TikTok did, with millions of followers, and the governor DeSantis being connected to you in some way, you're gonna be you can't enter the arena anonymously. I would say that. I have less sympathy towards. I mean, look, if you want to play the game, you're gonna get pushback. I
Yes,
would
but it
just
was.
say that. I
I
mean,
agree. I
it's not
agree.
like Libs of TikTok is sacred or something.
No, no,
Oh,
no.
how
I
dare
agree.
they?
But I agree. But it was just fascinating that all she didn't. There was no commentary that was
I
required.
agree.
All
I
she had
agree.
to do was to show them at the. I don't know how out of context it was, to be fair, but to show them at their worst.
Well, it wasn't. It wasn't out of context. I think all of Libs of TikTok videos did display what these people think. It's out of context in the sense of, like, look, let's also be honest here. 90+% of teachers are left of center. Sure. Teachers, I'm just guessing here, 65% of them vote Democrat, maybe 75. I don't know. But 90% of teachers are not insane demons. I mean, I've never met a teacher like that. Obviously I live in a kind of unique place, but I think the same is the case in Louisiana and Maine and Ohio or something like that. But they kind of get conservatives into this mind of they're all insane, and like teachers are teachers are the enemy or something. I mean, I think it was out of context in that sense. But that's kind of the nature of social media as well. But all right, let's get back on track with Roe v. Wade. So yeah, I mean, the conservatives focused on the leak itself, which again, agreed it's bad, and there are going to be a protest. But to get back to the polarization, going outside of the house of Neil Gorsuch or Kavanaugh, etc., that's gonna, even if they don't like attack them or burn down their house or something, I doubt they'll do that. It is kind of creepy and aggressive, and I think it's probably a bad idea. It's a misstep, a faux pas, in fact, an unforced error on the left's part. However, 70% of the American public supports Roe v. Wade, and that is a remarkably consistent statistic. If you look at, like, do you support gay marriage or something like that, we've seen these like huge shifts and so on. Roe v. Wade is just consistent. So the conservatives as well are already advancing things. So there was a law in Louisiana that actually would criminalize abortion and in fact criminalize the mother who aborted her child. So she could actually receive prison terms. So who knows where that will go, but it's kind of in the air. There's been two politicians, Blake Masters, who's running, the kind of Peter Thiel funded, kind of weird guy to say, I don't think believes any of this, talking about how they want to overturn not just Casey and Roe, which are these precedent decisions on abortion, but actually Griswold, I believe, is the name of the case, which occurred earlier, which allowed the state of Connecticut to sell birth control. So birth control has been banned in certain states. Interesting that happened in New England. Maybe counterintuitive now, but not counterintuitive then. But so there seems to be something in the air about banning contraception. Now, I don't think that's going to happen, but it's in the air. And the Democrats could be successful if they make the other side look nuts. They were successful in 2018. Basically, Trump's out of control. Biden, was he really the best candidate? I mean, on some ways, he's a good candidate because he's a centrist old white dude. But that was entirely an anti-Trump election. So I think anyway, I think this is actually going to play into the hands of the Democrats, because the other polarized, it's negative polarization. So it's about hating the other side.
The concern, as I have set out before, is that it will produce more Democrats. Because
there's no doubt about that. Because we'll go into that. But yeah,
such people abort their children. So it's that's the issue. I mean, I was, as you know, I did a video on this on my own channel, and the studies are, although they're a bit confused on intelligence, there was no clear correlation between intelligence and having an abortion in British data. And the reason for this seemed to be that on the one hand, you get low IQ people that get pregnant by accident, they have abortions. And on the other hand, you get older people that get pregnant, I don't know, they don't want to have a Down syndrome child or something. And they work out what's going on in time and they have abortions. And the two things kind of balance each other out. And it was also found that if you control for getting pregnant by accident, which itself is associated with low IQ, if you control for that, then the women that have an abortion tend to be, via various proxies such as subsequent education level and subsequent earnings, more intelligent than the women that don't have abortions when they get pregnant by accident, which makes sense because, of course, the women that don't have abortions will be too impulsive and it will be whatever. So that was the intelligence data. But then the stuff from America was quite strange. It seems that Black people are massively overrepresented among abortions. About 75% of abortions in America are done to people that are poor, basically.
Yes.
That are a certain standard deviation below the average wage. So that would imply that it would be selecting against intelligence in the United States, which is strange because it's not doing that in Europe. So I don't know what it is that's different in America, whether it's something to do with the fact that Black people are so highly overrepresented among abortions. I don't know what's going on there. But that was the intelligence data. So that basically implies that in America, though not elsewhere, it's eugenic.
Yeah. And then on the basis of class, even much more so than race, to be honest, because I think according this is a New York Times article from last year that was taking CDC data and Planned Parenthood and a couple other things, but 27% of abortions were to African Americans. So African Americans are, 13% of the population, roughly 27% of abortions, almost double. But then what's also interesting is whites are at 10%, so pretty radically underrepresented among abortions.
Yeah. So okay, yeah. So that would be Congress with some sort of eugenic effect, but it's not. It's among whites. It's not. It doesn't seem to be in Europe. So the data is a bit contradictory. And then as for personality, well, that's much clearer. Women that have abortions are more likely to have psychopathic traits. They're more likely to have serious mental illness. They're more likely to have all these kinds of traits, which are at least 0.5 heritable, if not more. And those traits are themselves associated with being left wing, and in America, and thus with voting Democrat. And so, right. what you would produce if you were, so that's eugenic. So basically, as far as I can see, abortion in America is eugenic. And if you get rid of it, you will do two things. You will produce low IQ people. You can say, okay, low IQ people vote Republican more than Democrat. That's true, but in general, they don't tend to vote at all. So right. It wouldn't actually interfere with the politics. Whereas reasonably high IQ psychopaths and depressives and that's associated with voting for the left. So it would be eugenic. Now, what people on my YouTube were countering, which was quite interesting, they were saying, well, wouldn't it's a good thing to get, yes, abortion is eugenic and whatever, we understand that. But on the other hand, they think it would speed up polarization. So it would result in lots of left-wing people in red states fleeing those states to blue states. That's what they suggested, because it would be this marker, it would be this such a touchy, volatile issue that it would result in people saying, "Oh, I can't live in a state that doesn't have a left-wing." People would feel that they don't want to live, and I don't know if that was their counter argument, or I thought it was a good thing.
Look, I mean, liberal people are moving to Texas and things like that. So I'm not sure I agree with that. I do think there's a big sort going on. Just, even in my neck of the woods, the amount of people, moving to the Flathead Valley is kind of incredible. I think there were I heard some of these 30 to 40,000 new car registrations in 2020. I do think there is a big sort going on. I'm not quite convinced, but do they want more polarization so we can have these like right-wing homelands in Louisiana?
Yes, that I think is what they want. Yes, that's their idea.
Yeah. See, whenever I hear these kind of things, it's because they want. Yeah, I don't buy that. I'm not sure they're going to leave. I think. Yeah, I don't fully buy that. Yeah, I mean, this was so going back to the data. Because we have to remember a couple of things. So 50% of abortions are in the United States are given to people at or just above or below or just above the poverty line. So it is a low income issue, more so than it's a race issue. This is also an interesting one. So 14% of women who have abortions are married, and 31% are cohabitating. So a large number of women who have abortions are in some kind of relationship. So again, this notion that, which I think is a kind of right-wing fantasy, which is that the only women who get abortions are nasty career gals who just want to rid their womb of the future in order to get more money and climb the corporate ladder. There's no doubt that there is a small percentage of women who are just like that, and who do have an abortion for almost spiteful reasons or excessively selfish reasons. But this just shows that a great deal of these abortions are thought through by the women who do them. And I would imagine that I could look deeper into the data, but I would say a large percentage of those abortions that occur to a married couple are due to Down syndrome or some kind of similar birth defect or deformation that they discover through genetic counseling. And so again, getting rid of making abortions illegal. Now, upper income women, they can travel there. Abortion would never be illegal across the country. California is not going to go that way.
But that wouldn't be the abortions that you're talking about for Down syndrome fetuses or whatever. That wouldn't be among probably the people that are poorer that have abortions. They probably just have abortions because they don't want to have another child.
I agree.
But yeah, in Iceland, for example, there's a 98% abortion rate on Down syndrome. They've almost wiped it out, and it's government policy to wipe it out, to have a Down syndrome-free Iceland.
Yeah. So we'll talk about the degree to which conservatives are kind of their own worst enemies on this, but I want to stick with the statistics just for a little bit longer here. So this is actually a Brookings Institute study. I think you can see this. And so this first slide, this is figure 1, sexual activity by income group. There's a little bit of a reverse bell curve where the middle class are having, 4 to 5% less sex than the lower and the upper class. So it's kind of what is that? The meme of like high-low alliance in terms of having a lot of sex.
Yeah,
but it's not terribly pronounced. This is interesting. So this is figure 2, non-use of contraception by income group. So if we go to lower income, 16% don't use contraception. Once we get to people who are 400% plus the poverty line, only that goes down to 8%. So basically, if you think of socioeconomic status as tracking with intelligence, not perfect, of course, but basically it is people who have a higher IQ and kind of greater foresight, maybe thoughtfulness, strategy, etc., are using contraception. So this also demonstrates that contraception is perhaps radically dysgenic. I mean, I've joked about it, I would ban contraception but then make abortion legal and free. If you're smart enough to use contraception, you shouldn't be using it. In other words,
it's a good point.
Ban condoms.
Get rid of them.
Abortion for the people. This is pregnancy rates by income group. So if we go to people at the poverty line, this is percent of single women aged 15 to 44 who had a pregnancy in a year prior. So 10% of women in that, fertile age group who are low and very low income, indeed at the poverty level, have had a children. It's only 3% in terms of higher income. I guess that's not surprising in this day and age, but that is certainly not good. And then this is interesting. So if we go, so most abortions are to low income people. However, as a percentage, higher income people are pretty radically more likely to take advantage of abortion. Now, they're a much smaller percentage of the population, of course. So, nevertheless, lower income people are having many, many more abortions than higher income. But as a percentage, higher income people are taking advantage of available abortions.
Yeah, and that was what was consistent. If you control for having a child by accident, control for getting pregnant by accident, then the more intelligent ones have an abortion, and that was what was in the data.
Right.
So yeah, that fits. So I just think that I'll go back to, I just think that the Republicans, I can see why they like the idea, it's a victory for us. And a lot of them are really religious. So they think, it's a victory for Jesus. And they don't believe in evolution and they don't believe in dinosaurs or whatever it is. You get these people in America that think. But I think it's incredibly short-sighted. The only argument I've heard is, it will help the polarization. I don't think it's going to particularly.
Well, that just seems to be an argument for we want more of this shit. We want more Marjorie Taylor Greenes yelling at people. We want more shrill women outside of people's homes with signs. I mean, why? I mean, first off, polarization just seems to be just a natural force it's a train on a track headed towards a destination. And what we can do about it is dubious. But beyond that, why would you want that?
Yeah,
doesn't it say something about you? I mean, don't you and I we recognize polarization, but don't we want to live in a society where we can have rational discourse about foreign policy and current events? You want to talk to people?
where there's time in the day to teach our children to read. Where we're not just farming all the time and trying to get food, because that's what this collapse will lead to, things like that.
Right.
So I don't know why you would want to speed it up. And what will speed it up will be allowing these mutants to have, well, not allowing,
forcing,
preventing them from not having children.
Yeah.
So they will get pregnant by accident, some of them. And if they want to not have children, I would think that's quite a good idea for the future. And you can be all sentimental if you like and say, the poor little baby, the baby hasn't done anything. The baby is going to be 50% the same genetically as its mother, and the mother is probably going to have sexually selected, assuming, okay, but then you get these counter arguments, she was raped. The baby will be, on average, it will be a father that will be genetically quite similar to the mother anyway. And so what you're getting up with is these genes that are going to be associated with mental illness and with antisocial behavior. That's what predicts. Those are the two key things in this Dutch study that predict having an abortion. I mean, prior to having had the abortion, they've got data on it. I mean, not so much subsequently. And there was evidence that looked at the psychology of these women subsequently, and it found there's no way that having the abortion was causal. They've got psychiatric problems because they've just got psychiatric problems. And so those people are voluntarily resigning from the gene pool, which is an excellent thing. And the idea that you shouldn't help them to do that is on the basis of some misplaced sentimentality. It's like being sentimental about a pit bull terrier or a Rottweiler puppy and saying, "Oh, isn't it cute? Isn't it cute?" It's going to grow up into a pit bull terrier or a Rottweiler. It's going to bite your face off. So don't be sentimental about it when it's a puppy, because what it will become is a pit bull terrier or a Rottweiler. So I was sentimental about a baby lion.
I distinctly remember my grandfather warning me about this. He actually told me all puppies are cute, but they grow into dogs.
All puppies are cute, and some of them will grow up to be cute dogs like Springer Spaniels or whatever.
Right. Or my delightful animal, Zeus.
Your dog barks
the
too
kindest. Much. He does bark, but he's just worried about me.
Well, he's got no business being worried about you. Just make it clear to him you're live streaming with me, and nothing bad is going to happen. The dog next door.
He has a lot of conscientiousness and concern, harm avoidance. I mean, he's a very concerned. He is definitely the nicest animal I've ever.
What breed is he?
Well, I'm afraid he's a race trader. So he's a Bernedoodle. So he's half.
Yeah, this is the thing.
Right. He's poodles. You know, poodles really get a bad rap because when you think about poodles, you think of these just absurd animals that their own horrible owners have like cut off their tail and done all these weird shaving, and they have like boots, and then they've shaved their arms. Horrible stuff. I always had a bad impression of poodles due to their owners and not due to the innocent dogs themselves. But poodles are just really great animals. They're smart. They're really nice. And then the Bernese Mountain Dog is also a really kind dog. But this is he'll live longer. He'll be a little more manageable because Bernese are huge. So yeah, he's the best dog I've ever had. He's really
yes. They do. That's the problem with their pedigree. They tend to be inbred, and that's the only dog I ever had, Springer Spaniel. He was inbred. He had epilepsy. He died young.
I think they've started to hand that. Golden Retrievers were really popular in America in like the 80s and 90s, and they did have these inbreeding problems. And I think they've kind of become aware of that and have handled that issue. But
back to the abortion issue. The point is that's what they're doing. I mean, you can see it as a natural evolutionary process whereby you end up with this population of extremely sick people, and those extremely sick people will include mental sicknesses, which will then cause them to not want to pass on their own genetic sickness, and so then they will go down in number. And that is, or at least if not in absolute numbers, then as a proportion of the population. And that's what as I argue in my book, Spiteful Mutants, which may be coming out next month. Who knows?
Oh, give me a break, Ed. It's
that is the natural process that potentially of things. So I think it's a very, very short-sighted, and you've got to remember this is people that don't understand this. 20% of pregnancies in America are aborted. 1 in 5, and that is enough to impact. That's more than enough to impact the gene pool over a generation, and certainly over 2 generations. So it's a serious number, and they should really think carefully about that. But I mean, then that's the thing. Your counter argument make a good point that a lot of people that want abortions, they will get them. It's just a question of traveling. Like in the Republic of Ireland, they only legalized abortion in the Republic of Ireland a few years ago, but there was just a well-known phenomenon of getting the boat from Dublin over to Liverpool or whatever, and getting an abortion.
It's almost worse because definitely middle-class women, they'll take a little vacation to California and. Again, there's a kind of unspoken quality to abortion throughout the ages. It's kind of, it feels very odd to be pro-abortion, but there are a lot of poor women who can't or won't do that. And so what will happen? Will this cut down abortions by 75%, by 50%, by 25%? I don't know exactly. Maybe closer to 25, actually. If it is banned, because they could do this. I mean, Mitch McConnell mentioned yesterday that a federal abortion ban is possible. The Democrats are talking about codifying Roe into law, not relying on the Supreme Court. The Republicans are talking about codifying anti-Roe into law. So if it's done nationally, then I think it will seriously cut down on abortions. I mean, you're going to go to Mexico or Canada. I mean, I don't know, but if it's done state by state or regionally, is what it will be like, because the South will kind of go together. Then it might just cut down on abortions by 25%. But again, it's going to be very low income, very low intelligent people who can't or won't get on a bus and
do they even have abortion in Mexico?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Catholic country.
I assume so.
I mean, I don't know if they do.
I don't know. I don't know either.
So
and they're having Mexico is going through a demographic collapse. That's kind of one of the unmentioned things about it as well. But anyway, yeah. So I mean, what I would say is that the abortion, the trajectory of the conservative anti-abortion crusade is rather interesting. In the 1970s, when Roe v. Wade came down in 1973, Billy Graham was pro-choice. Pat Robertson was also pro-choice. And the Roe decision was endorsed by the Southern Baptist Coalition, which is very conservative, still relatively very conservative. It was interesting because I had this debate. There was actually a very friendly debate with a progressive kind of libertarian, also a practicing witch, who is a very nice witch, Ed. She basically debunked your book. We might have to withdraw it after I met this one individual.
How did this lovely witch debunk my book?
She's nice and she's a witch.
Has she read my book?
No, I really liked her. She's very nice. She's married. She has 2 children. I'll send her the book. But okay. Very nice girl. But anyway, she was claiming that there were a lot of progressives who were pro-life. I mean, she couldn't name one, to be honest. And, again, I don't want to dunk on her or anything, but it was a evangelical Christian cause, but they actually first had to convince the evangelical leaders. And so the Francis Schaeffer, whatever happened to the human race was a major documentary that they produced. He and his son. But there was this cause. Then once Jerry Falwell and company got involved, it became, with a moral majority, Paul Weyrich, et cetera, it became maybe the defining issue that if you are not just conservative, but if you are a Republican, you are pro-life. George Herbert Walker Bush was pro-choice. His father was actually on the board of Planned Parenthood, Prescott Bush. The Planned Parenthood was a kind of Republican operation. We forget all these things. He flipped over during the Reagan administration to being pro-life. He almost had to, much like Lindsey Graham claims that he's a Trumpian populist now, et cetera. J.D. Vance, I love Trump now, just so happens to align with my short-term interest. So they really defined it, and it became a litmus test issue for the Republican Party. But it wasn't like that at the beginning. But the conservatives have been working on this for 50 years. I mean, they have had a tremendous amount of patience doing this, and they have no doubt dedicated. I mean, if you add up the man hours, the funding, the pro-life organizations, the marches, I mean, they have dedicated billions of dollars to this crusade. It has been it for them. And they have done it, apparently. And they've even engaged in some kind of noble lying. Robert Bork, who was nominated by Reagan to be a Supreme Court justice, was too autistic or too honest. And he basically said, yes, I want to overturn Roe v. Wade during his confirmation hearing. Justice Thomas, who came after him, Alito, Roberts, et cetera, they have all, Kavanaugh, they've all kind of skirted the issue, just kind of beaten around the bush and be like, well, we can look at this and, yes, we stare decisis, we observe precedent, but, Plessy versus Ferguson, et cetera. They've all made these kind of arguments where everyone more or less knew that they wanted to overturn the decision, but they weren't willing to say it. Trump, another person, I don't think he's autistic, but he's just very honest. He did say during 2016 to the religious right, he's like, you may not like me, you may hate my guts, but you got to vote for me, pro-life judges. And he was right. He appointed 3 pro-life judges who all apparently signed off on this decision. So this has been a long-term thing. I do think that the motives behind it, at least at the beginning, were trad in the sense of, listen, women, you can't just have it all. You can't live a consequence-free life. You need to take care of children. Go. This is who you are as a woman, is a child rearing entity. That's who you are. That's the most fulfilling thing you can possibly have. We might have to patronize you and force you to do it if you're not willing to do it on your own. I do think that there was a trad motive behind it, but there are not trad consequences to it. And I actually question the degree to which there are trad motives now. I don't hear a lot of trad talk from pro-lifers. You hear a lot of human rights talk from pro-lifers.
Well, yeah, they're trying to coach, they're trying to persuade, so they're trying to coach it in the language that the typical NPC will understand and be swayed by.
Right.
So you can understand that. I mean, it does seem absolutely extraordinary. I don't know. Well, no, I was going to say the golden rule: would you want it done to you,
right,
to be aborted? But the problem with that is that it raises the questions of at what point there's a self. At what point are you?
Right.
And are you when you are a clump of cells, a zygote? Surely not. So it gets a bit complicated. But no, it's in a short-term way. It's a kind of way of feeling that you have a victory for once over the libs,
right.
of feeling that you it's reimposing something of patriarchy in a sense, and of control on women's bodies, and there is perhaps a degree to which a lot of them will feel. So there will be some people who have not been pushed along the right roadmap of life. I love that metaphor. And so, and if you push them along that, then they will have children and they will be happier. And the evidence is that there's a very interesting book by Joanna Williams on this called Women versus Feminism, is that's what makes women happy. And you'd expect it to, because that's their evolutionary match. So that's what they go for. They do their career because they're pressured to do so and so forth. But then they go part-time, or they take early retirement or whatever, and they want to do these nurturing sorts of things. And so you could argue that the banning of abortion as an option would assist some of these kinds of women to be happier by compelling them in a way that they've been indoctrinated not to do the thing that actually really they want to do. But then the counter argument is that those kinds of women are not the modal kind of woman who has an abortion. Although there are, of course, women like that have an abortion, and there are, of course, women that have abortions because they've been raped, or and that's eugenic, obviously, because that child will have the genes of a rapist, or whatever. But so I just think that overall it is a short-termist to get rid of abortion.
Well, let me push back on is it Joanne Williamson? Is that her name?
Joanna Williams.
Joanna Williams. Let me push back a little bit. Isn't, in a way, control of fertility and the power that comes from it also modal for women? I mean, women are the limiting factor. It's women have 1 egg a month. We have 1 million sperm a month. Women, that's the women is the critical point. What?
1 million sperm a month?
Well, don't we have?
No. How did you manage to get 2 children if you only produce 1 million sperm a month?
Oh, wow. Okay. I was just, what is it? 1 billion or yeah?
Way more. It's 500 million per ejaculation.
Oh, wow. Well, for me, it's like 1 trillion, but
Okay, yeah, anyway, carry on. Yes,
you get my point. Stop being so autistic. It's 1 billion to 1, sperm to egg ratio base. Let's put it that way, So they're the critical limiting factor, and that brings a tremendous amount of power. I mean, if you believe that there once was, before the age of patriarchy, there was a kind of matriarchal rule. It was that, I mean, according to Robert Graves, this is a bit of a hobby horse of mine, But according to Robert Graves, there was a kind of matriarchal society where women said, we're like the field, and we have sex for pleasure, but we produce offspring, and thus we all survive. And it was a kind of matriarchal tyranny. It was the phallic culture that began to be introduced later on, of saying, no, we inseminate you. And it was the kind of beginning of patriarchy, when the boy who refused to die, who refused to be sacrificed. Perhaps this is totally a historical.
It's not we inseminate. It's you. They're saying, if you inseminate us against our will, then we will get our father and our brothers to beat you up or whatever. So you can't do that against our will. And what we want from them in return for insemination is resources. To which the chap then says, okay, if that's fine. If you want my resources, I want to be sure that it is my child that is being invested in. Thus, I must control your sexuality.
Oh, I get that.
Balance that was
I totally get that and agree with it. I would love to have pushback on the Robert Graves. He uses myth to basically intuit, as it were, a deep history. Now, there might be people who are opposed to this. What he is suggesting is that there was a matriarchal society before the inauguration of a phallic society. That bargain wasn't possible because there wasn't an understanding of insemination. And so basically the woman claimed that we are fertile as the field. They wouldn't claim as the field, agriculture wasn't, but we are fertile. We can just produce offspring.
Oh, I see what you mean. No, that's been shown to be a myth. There
really?
is no
a myth in the other sense of the word.
Yeah, there is no human society on Earth that doesn't understand the connection between having sex and having children.
Okay, interesting. So poor Robert Graves was wrong. I love that.
Wow,
book.
Was he? God, I'm surprised. I've read some of his stuff. I've not been impressed, I have to say. But it's. Are we thinking of the same person?
Yeah, who wrote I, Claudius? He wrote the.
Oh no, I was thinking. Oh no, I'm thinking of somebody else. Joseph Graves. But no, Robert Graves is wrong about this. Yes. It used to be there was some anthropologist, I don't know if it was Malinowski or something, that came to the conclusion that there were some groups that didn't know the connection between sex and having children. But it's been subsequently realized that they do know.
Okay.
They see chickens do it and they made the connection. Do we have any super chats?
Okay, let's go to super chats. Okay, let me put up the banner real quick. So we prefer super chats via Odyssey. Please use Odyssey. We're kind of moving away from Entropy. Okay. Richard. Okay, let me go to this one first. Ed, is the conspiratard Republican Congresswoman Lauren Boebert, who owns a gun-themed cafe in Colorado and is the unacknowledged daughter of 80s pro wrestler Stan Lane. Really? I never heard that. An example of the type of person abortion tends to help remove from the gene pool. So these conservatives, I guess what he's asking, or let me rephrase it a bit, are the kind of low rent conservatives like Lauren Boebert or Marjorie Taylor Greene, are they kind of pursuing their own strategy when they want to ban abortion because they're actually the types of people who would be aborted?
Sorry, can you ask that again? My daughter was calling me.
Sure.
Say it again. Not the question, your summary.
Ed, let me read it. Let me read it again. It's fine. Is the conspiratard Republican Congresswoman Lauren Boebert, who owns a gun-themed cafe in Colorado and is the unacknowledged daughter of 80s pro wrestler Stan Lane? I've not heard that. An example of the type of person abortions tends to help remove from the pool. And what I'm kind of expanding upon is that maybe there is a kind of hidden intuitive strategy by some of these people because they kind of know on some level that they would be of low rent pro-life people like Lauren Boebert.
I see what you mean. Yeah,
I would be aborted because I'm.
That's good. I think overall, these spiteful mutanty type people are going to be on the left overall. It's more mutated than the right, but you do get obviously mutational load among right wing people as well. So it's perfectly conceivable that you would therefore have a person who was pro-life and was advocating pro-life things and whatever, probably in quite an extreme, unreasonable, emotional way, who would be involved in the pro-life movement, who would be the kind of person that abortion would be in a sane world selecting out. Yes, that's perfectly possible that you would come up with anecdotal examples of this. I don't know. I googled her. I can't find this woman. Bovard. I don't know how you spell Bovard.
Lauren Boebert.
I don't know.
She's one of these neo-Trump people who have entered the scene. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Madison Cawthorn, who's he's really being put through the ringer. And Boebert.
Certainly there would be some people, yes, I think I think you're right. Perhaps on an unconscious level, these mutants realize that they oppose dysgenics and eugenics because they realize that they'd be the kinds of people that it would be subjected to it. That's the first thing. Although it may not be as complicated as that. It's just for them a way of getting power via virtue signaling and victimhood signaling and whatever. And I'm sure, as I think I discussed this with another chap that I discussed things with on his channel, and those kinds of people, if you would say to them, if there was a right-wing gene and we could remove it from the population, would you be up for it? They would tend to say yes. Mm-hmm. So they're not consistent in their opposition to eugenic policies. They oppose eugenics because it helps them socially to do so. And it's the same with why they favor abortion. Although why they get so rabid about it. I mean, did you see that woman, the Pocahontas woman? What's her name?
Warren, Elizabeth Warren.
Elizabeth Warren, her insane reaction to it, because I think it kind of reminds her. The only thing I can think of is that you've got a sort of vulnerable narcissist type woman that's come up with this front that she's powerful and she's a strong woman, and the fact that they can do that reminds her of what she knows she is deep down, which is just the poor little rich girl sort of thing. And this sort of triggers her into a rage about herself. That's the only thing I can.
Let me flip it around a little bit and put on a Freudian hat. So she was kind of, hysteric and she's passionate about the issue. I mean, you get passionate about stuff, you kind of but she was, if you rephrased what she was saying, she sounded actually quite a bit like Margaret Sanger. So Margaret Sanger is the founder of Planned Parenthood. She was a Republican. She was not promoting abortion at that time. She was promoting contraception. And there are some of these in her correspondence. She would kind of let her hair down. And so she would write statements like, we don't want to just tell Blacks in Alabama that we want to eliminate them from the gene pool. Now, that was kind of said rhetorically, of course, but to take that line out of context is pretty salacious. And she did, in a way. She was a 3 generations of morons is more than enough type person. She made explicitly eugenic arguments. Now, she would phrase them in better ways when she was writing, publicly. But in her correspondence, she kind of let her hair down. She corresponded with Madison Grant, etc. She was a eugenicist. Yeah. And she saw contraception as absolutely, like, this is one of the reasons, not the only one, but, bodily autonomy, etc. But this was one of the reasons to promote this, was to limit the reproduction of stupider people in the population, just explicitly. And again, that is the kind of secret. If you look at Elizabeth Warren, she's still making those arguments. She's just phrasing them in a different way. So it's like these low income women of color, they won't have access to bodily autonomy.
Oh, I see.
Isn't it funny that she's still focusing on the target and she's just phrasing it differently?
So that's the anger. It's the contradictory feelings.
Yes.
But really, she wants these people murdered and wants them removed. But then on the other hand, she needs to promote them as good and honest and moral. Oh, yes, that's very interesting. I like that. Yes.
Yeah. The old Spencer Freudian hot take, where I can turn any liberal into a fascist within 30 seconds. You're welcome. Okay. Okay, this is an interesting one from Yehuda. Let me just refresh here. Richard, Will America falter in its support of Ukraine due to domestic troubles like abortion and the looming economic recession, similar to what happened in the 1970s when America lost its client states in South Vietnam and Iran? That is very interesting. I might answer yes to that. You know, the Ukraine crisis does bring us back to a Cold War era, and the height of the Cold War era in the late 40s and 50s and so on, when the Soviet Union got nuclear weapons and there was the German crisis and all this kind of stuff. That was a remarkably stable time in the country where there could be a bipartisan foreign policy. I mean, if anything, Republicans were still kind of on the, more or less on the America First side of things, and the Democrats were kind of more aggressive in promoting the Cold War and in promoting. I mean, it was Truman and then Kennedy and Johnson who were fighting these wars in Asia. Or at least starting them. And, you need a stable home front in order to have a bipartisan foreign policy. And if you are engaging in self-deconstruction and turmoil on the home front, it's going to be more difficult to fight a Cold War, because that takes fighting a Cold War in particular. That takes a great deal of long-term planning and stability, because there is no urgency. You're not, oh my God, we're being invaded. Everyone grab a gun. It's not that. It's no, we need to have a long-term strategy. We need a Kennan-like figure, thinking about how we should conceive of this over the course of decades. And that is going to be increasingly impossible if the home front is going mad. Yeah. I mean, I think you make an excellent point. I think he also added a little, Ed, with regards to abortion, why is the British spelling of fetus so annoying?
I don't know. As you know, I've published quite a few of my books with Washington Summit Publishers, which is an American publisher. And so I've got used to writing in American English when I write for them. And it does seem...
For you, you're the editor of that. But yeah,
well, that's true. I write for me. Okay, all right. Well, okay, well, it's right for them in the sense that they're an organization. And I do. Okay, well, if I'm the editor, then I'd like to clamp down and bring back most English spelling. But some American spellings are better. And I do think that fetus is better. I'd rather spell fetus, F-E-T-U-S. I'd rather spell jail, J-A-I-L.
That's how we spell jail, right?
That's how you spell jail. Yeah, it's not how we spell jail.
Oh, how do you spell jail?
G-A-O-L.
Really?
Yeah. But the American one has kind of caught on. And there are various other spellings that are better. But if these words come from Greek, like things like pedophile, which you spell pedophile, well, it comes from Greek, and it's pedo. That's how it's.
Hey, Ed, you've convinced me. I mean, all you have to do is make an compelling argument, and I'm very open-minded, as you know.
I like, for example, the way that Americans use Z. So I think civilization, we say zation,
right?
Then let's spell it with a Z. But
I agree.
You spell it with an S.
This didn't Webster actually do this? It was this attempt to create a kind of American English. I mean, behavior is also, I just think, cleaner without.
No, that's behavior or behavior. We would say behavior.
Behavior.
And there's a U in that. There's a U sound. Behavior. If you say behavior.
What? How? Damn it, Ed! How would you explain labor?
Labor. Labor. Labour Party. Yeah, I like that. But no, I stick with that one. Labour, which should be O-U-R. But there are some spellings that I don't. I quite like in the Americans. The Z. I just use it. I think it's ridiculous to spell secularization with an S rather than a Z. I think it should be a Z.
Look, we can change the style guide. I mean, I'm kind of convinced, because you made an argument that appeals to me, which is that we should, go back to the Greeks.
Well, yeah, I mean, like encyclopedia is another one. I think I prefer the American spelling of encyclopedia. We have to have the AE and whatever with the English spelling. This is really off topic, isn't it? Abortion, but I mean, was there a spelling of abortion that was a problem, or what was the?
No, I think it's fetus.
Oh, that's fetus. That's
foetus. Yeah,
yeah, but that's a Latin word, isn't it? Fetus.
Yeah,
Latin,
it would be. Yes,
I think.
to the Latin.
So that's where
yes.
the Americans have just dropped the O. I don't know. It's a shame that.
Do you think we changed orthography due to pronunciation? Because everyone was pronouncing it as fetus, and
maybe.
So
I mean, there was no there was no totally fixed spelling until really not that long ago. Maybe 1700 or later. There was no fixed spelling.
Oh, I think much later, actually. Yeah, spelling in Shakespeare is all over the place. I think even spelling among like the founding documents, I think, was creative or something.
Yeah, so there was no fixed spelling until later, and so that's how it sort of developed. I mean, we even have now within within British English, words that are spelt different ways.
Interesting.
And you choose one or the other. Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Richard. I called into a Sirius XM radio show and used all your talking points on abortion. Did you listen to it, and how did I do? It's Alter Family Politics, hosted by Jonathan Alter and Charlotte Alter from Time Magazine. I sent it to you, Dylan. Oh, this is Dylan, who is I think a former friend and now enemy of your dear friend, Baked Alaska.
Oh, yes. And so what is? Have you listened to this show?
He used my talking points about, this was very interesting because I tweeted out about 5 days ago or so that the conservatives show a certain lack of moral seriousness about their rhetoric, in the sense that they claim 1 million babies are murdered every year in the United States. When they talk about abortion, they will say that very often, because we have roughly 1 million a year. It's interesting, with roughly 1 million immigrants a year and roughly 1 million abortions. But they use that type of rhetoric. But what I was saying is that what's interesting is that the mother is treated as a victim by the mainstream pro-life movement. And so even in this recent Texas, even in this recent Texas law, you could civilly sue the abortion provider and theoretically the Uber driver who drove her to the abortion clinic or the boyfriend who paid for it. But you could not civilly sue the woman. And you see this again and again, where they want to outlaw abortion, and they would do these huge fines or maybe even imprisonment of abortion providers. But the woman gets off scot-free, and it's almost treating the woman as a victim, which I think is extremely sentimental. The notion that a woman who gets an abortion doesn't have agency, particularly the 15% of married couples who have an abortion due to Down syndrome or something like that, is just ridiculous. And if you're going to make this claim, you really have to follow through. And so I suggested on Twitter that the pro-life cause is just, they just lack seriousness on some level. It's sentimental. Donald Trump in 2016, I don't know if you remember, he was being interviewed, because this is when Donald Trump discovered that he was a pro-lifer after not being for his entire life, and conveniently just before he's going to run for office. And he was asked, would you punish the woman if abortion were to be outlawed? And he thought about it. He goes, well, I guess we have to do it. And it was, interestingly, it was the pro, which is true. I mean, again, if you have to take this stuff seriously. And he was just being honest and not being well versed in their current, paradigm. But the pro-lifers at that point were anti-Trump. They were pro-Cruz. They weren't really on board with Trump. And so they were attacking him very harshly for saying that, because they're kind of like, you're ruining our deal here. And I think he went back on it or something like that. But what I said is that those people, Trump was actually right, and those people were not morally serious. Now, I have been, I guess my bluff was called, because there was a proposed legislation that I think will go to the floor of the Louisiana House or Senate. So it's a state policy. If I'm wrong in the details, I can be corrected. that would criminalize abortion and would imprison a woman who seeks one. So they are actually doing it. They are really motivated. And so I don't know. I think I made a good point, but my point might have been usurped by these conservatives. But anyway, thank you, Dylan, for using my talking points. I always appreciate that when people use my talking points. Anyway, I would just go back to this. Maybe I am overstating the matter, but to go back to what I was saying before, they had the patience of a James Bond villain in pursuing the pro-life cause. This has been going on since the 70s. Billions of dollars, millions of man hours have been dedicated to this. They've gotten it. And I think it is actually going to be really bad for conservatives on a number of levels. I might be wrong about this, but I do think the Democrats, and what I mean by Democrats, I just mean average center-left Democrat voters actually are going to be motivated by this because they're going to see the Republicans as attacking the status quo and doing something that they don't like and that's radical. And so I do think there's going to be motivated. Now, I might be wrong that Republicans might win the House, et cetera, but bear with me. But I think overall, the demographic consequences in red states will be maybe catastrophic for red voters. So it's been a 50-year-long crusade, and they've been hoisted by their own petard. All right. Well, we've done our hour. Do you want to talk about Musk, or should we just?
No, let's do that next time. And also the end of the Republic of Ireland. Sorry, the end of Northern Ireland.
Oh, wow. I do want to talk about that.
Well,
okay,
we'll have more to say next week when it's happened.
How do you pronounce it? Sinn Féin?
Sinn Féin.
Sinn Féin.
Is now the majority party in Northern Ireland. The deputy leader of Sinn Féin will be the First Minister of Northern Ireland. The leader of Sinn Féin is in Dublin. So it's not looking good.
Not looking good for us Protestants, is it?
No. That's because too many Protestants vote for the Alliance Party, which is this non-sectarian party of woke Protestants.
Well, unionism triumphant. Is this a consequence of Brexit?
Unionism is not triumphant; it's the opposite of that.
No. I meant Irish nationalism.
Oh right, yeah.
Unionism. I agree. I misspoke there. Yeah.
Yes, it's possibly in part. Yeah. So it's not good news. As I say,
all right, everyone.
Sorry,
go ahead.
No. It's just you feel what I was saying. Ed is happy Sinn Féin won. I don't know. I'm not sure I'm happy, but it's going to be interesting. That's for sure.
Yes, republicanism triumphant. Yeah, sorry, I misspoke there. All right, everyone, thank you, and I will thank you everyone for watching. Thank you particularly for who threw in some super chats. Check out Substack because I'm actually going to be having a Substack has really been going well. We've got a ton of free subscribers, so you get updates and so on. It really makes things a lot easier that I can contact you directly. And but also, I'm really excited about the amount of people who are subscribing to Substack because that just makes this all possible. And so I am going to do a call in about 45 minutes for subscribers. So talk to everyone soon. Bye-bye.
Talio.